This is a very easy to make build, and it's also very straightforward. It's also a build that you're going to be able to carry all throughout the entirety of the game. And if your gear that we're going to be using right in here, which it's just basically 2 pieces of gear, but if you run out of your gear or you're out leveling your gear, I should better say, then this is something that you're going to be able to farm back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The cool thing about this build is that it's very powerful. It can basically one-tap most of the things that you have out there, and it's also AoE damage with missiles that are going to be tracking the enemy. Now, this being a general build, that means that we're not going to be talking about the Bolt Hunter on itself. Maybe we can talk about the skills that I'm using for my particular Bolt Hunter, but have in mind that this is a build that you can use with any Bolt Hunter that you have, and your skills, the actual active skills of your Bolt Hunter, are just going to incentivize and improve on this. But to establish this on itself, it only requires for 2 things. Now, that being said, we're going to be able to start farming. This basically requires the farming method that we have for everything. And the farming location is just going to be right in here on the splash zone. And this is actually going to be the boss that we're going to be farming. So you have a boss in here, the splash zone, and he is going to be dropping the actual 2 items that we need for this build to work. It is a legendary weapon, of course, and it is the lead balloon. Now, have in mind that the actual name of the weapon, it's the one that's on the right, because gripping might change depending on the perks and accessories that this weapon may or may not have. The gripping lead balloon can actually come with different things, the accessories, the perks that the actual shotgun is going to bring. It's going to be dependent on the actual name that it has. Sometimes these guys, the primary stats, the damage of the pellets can deal a little bit more damage. Sometimes you can have one sight or a different sight than the actual one that I have right in here. So all of that is going to be dependent on the weapon that you get. But the base of everything, like, you just need the shotty, and that's it. Now, one of the amazing things about this weapon is the lightweight perk that this has. Projectiles float upward and spawn child projectiles upon exploding, and these guys deal massive and massive and massive damage. However, that is damage that it's supposed to be used for AoE, and the independent pellets on itself are not going to deal that much more damage. So let's actually talk about the 2 firing modes that we're going to have with this weapon and how are we going to use them. You have the impact, and also you have the sticky. The sticky is my favorite because it's the one that you're going to be using mostly for exploration. So the sticky basically gives you those pellets. These are going to stick onto the enemy. It's 3 of them, and you can pop them by reloading your weapon. You can actually fire several of them at the same time, and then every time that you reload the weapon, it's going to be able to pop all of those stickies that you have right in there. Now the other one, it's the impact, and I advise that you use the impact with enemies that are like, they are chunky enemies that have like a bulky kind of hitbox. More often than not, this is something that you're going to be using with bosses, because as you can see, this is not very effective against this guy. He's just running away, he's getting away from my pellets because I'm not actually managing to deal much damage to him. However, opposite, if I actually switch to my sticky pellets right in here, I can one-tap one entire health bar of this guy. However, the impacts are actually quite powerful and they deal lots and lots of damage. They deal much more damage than the sticky ones. But these are some things that you're going to be able to use against bosses. Boss fights that you have in the story of the game. There are many bosses that have like huge hitboxes. That's when you should be using them. The second part of the build is going to be the shield. Then again, this is also a legendary item that you can get from the very same location that we're farming the shotgun. You can either get the shotgun or you can get the shield. You can also get a legendary grenade, however that's not going to be important for our build. So essentially with our shotgun we're always going to be on the face of the enemy killing things. Now, this has a legendary perk that it's called Bundled. On kill spawns missiles that hone in on nearby enemies and deal 237 damage each. Now that's going to be the main one. You also have the spike, which basically it's damage to the enemy whenever they deal damage to you. You also have the missile swarm. So essentially you have 3 shields, and every time that they pop one shield, 3 missiles are going to shoot towards the enemy, but they don't deal as much damage as the bundled one. Now the bundled, that's the interesting one, because as you can see right here, it can basically ricochet into several different enemies and kill them, as you can see right in here, allowing you for a massive amounts of AoE damage. And these ricochets actually one-shot the enemies, and they stop doing that ricochet effect to at some point. This depends on the distance that you are from the enemy and several other factors. It's not going to happen infinitely, but it is going to happen very consistently. That's when you're going to be activating these things to actually deal damage to the enemy. So essentially that's the gist of everything. You kill things with your shotty, which more often than not is going to one-shot things. Those things that you kill are going to projectile the missiles that are going to hone into the rest of the enemies, and sometimes the rest of the enemies that get killed by those missiles are going to release more missiles, and they are going to kill more enemies. Now I'm thinking that because of balance things, they stopped launching missiles. I do not know if they have a cooldown. They don't seem to have a cooldown in here. One thing that I do want to advise as well, and that I do want to mention, is that it does not seem to work with snipers, so you actually do need to be close to the enemies that you kill. That's why this build is particularly useful with a shotty, because with a shotty you always have to be on the face of the enemy. That means that you're always going to be having your projectiles, missiles shooting all around the place. Now I did mention that we wouldn't really talk too much about the Bolt Hunter on itself, mainly because this is a build that it's based on the shield, a combination between the shield, the shotty, and the shield, and that synergy that they cause for you to be able to be on the face of the enemy and be dealing damage. I do want to mention that the Forge Knight specifically is very useful for this build, precisely because he has the Scourge. So when you have the shield active, you essentially become a riot warrior, and it becomes a synergy of a perfectly balanced Triforce. The shield is protecting you from the damage. You're still on the face of the enemy, so you're dealing close quarter damage to the enemy, and then to those close quarter damage that you're dealing to the enemy, you're actually making them launch the little pellets, missiles that home from your shield, and you're raining havoc while you're invulnerable. So that's actually kind of nice. Because of that, I don't have that much survivability things, and when it comes to the early level of this character, I have increased damage while we have our health at the maximum, which we should always have, especially if we're using the Scourge. And then I also have the Eternal, which increases the skill duration, because I do want to maintain that skill as much as possible. You also have the concession of having the Blast Shield. This is for DPS, and this is if you're playing on cooperative. If you're playing with your friends, this is actually going to heal your allies. So this is for solo play, I'd say, for more DPS, and then if you're playing with your friends, then this is the one that you should be using. And just like that, you have a very simple to craft build. And remember that if you feel that you're out leveling your gear and you're getting just trash from the enemies and from the story, and you feel that you don't like the weapons that you get seeing, you don't like the combinations, and you think that this is very broken, it is very broken, and it kills things fast, it keeps you alive, it's just so fun to use. Then if you feel that your build is not ramping up to how are you progressing through the story and how your friends are geared up, and you can just go back, farm the builds depending on the level that you are, because the farming actually levels up with you. So if you're level 10, for example, and then you level to 15 and you feel that your weapons are not dealing as much damage, go back and the farming of the stuff that you're going to get is going to give you level 15 stuff. Anyways, if you like the content, like and never super appreciate it, and also if you're a gorgeous, beautiful person, you are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful, beautiful person, subscribe to the channel, join Discord, have a beautiful day and goodbye.